Welcome to the Informatica Cloud 201 On-Demand course. Module 10, Exception Handling. After completing this module, you will be able to understand the requirement of exception handling, discuss type of exceptions, discuss user-defined fatal and non-fatal exceptions, and discuss reject files. Let us discuss why exception handling is required. Maintaining data quality is most important in any data warehouse project. So ETL architects and data architects spend a lot of time defining the exception handling approach. Informatica Cloud is given with a set of options to take care of the exception handling in all of your ETL jobs. In this module, let us see how we leverage these options to handle exceptions and exception. Before we discuss how error handling is done, let us understand what are the different kind of exceptions that may occur while executing various Informatica Cloud tasks. You have to deal with different types of exceptions in an ETL job. When you run a task, Informatica Cloud Service may encounter fatal or non-fatal errors or exceptions. Apart from that, there could be few user-defined exceptions. Let us discuss them one by one. User-defined exceptions. Data issues critical to data quality which might get loaded to the database unless explicitly checked for quality. These types of exceptions occur because of improper handling of data by the business users. For example, a credit card transaction with a future transaction data can get loaded into database unless the transaction date of every record is checked. Non-fatal exceptions. Exceptions which could get ignored by the Informatica Cloud Server and cause the records drop out from the target table. For example, a data conversion transformation error can fail the record from loading to the target table. A fatal error occurs when the Informatica Cloud Server cannot access the source, target, or repository. This can include loss of connection or target database errors, such as lack of database space to load data. For example, exceptions such as database connection errors, which forces Informatica Cloud Service to stop running the workflow. Let us now discuss user-defined exceptions or error handling techniques in detail. Business users cause these type of exceptions, which might be critical to the quality of data getting loaded to the target tables. To handle such exceptions, Informatica Cloud Service provides us with two types of exception handling techniques. They are the error handling functions and the user-defined error tables. You can use two functions provided by Informatica Cloud Services to define user-defined exception capture log. Error. This function causes Informatica Cloud Service to skip a row and issue an error message. This message will be defined by the end user. The error message displays in the session log are written to the error log tables, based on the error logging type configuration in the session. Abort stops the session and issues a specified error message to the session log file, or written to the error log tables based on the error logging type configuration in the session. When the Informatica Cloud Service encounters an abort function, it stops transforming data at that row. It processes any rows right before the session aborts. You can use error and abort in an expression transformation to validate the data. Error handling functions are easy to implement with very less coding efforts, but once the exceptions are detected, they are written in the session log file. The session log file contains a lot of other information pertaining to all the tasks being executed in a particular Informatica Cloud session. Hence, to get the details of the exception from the session log might be a tedious task for the end user. To avoid this disadvantage of exception handling functions, you can create your own error log tables and capture the error records into it. You can configure your session properties so that during data transformation, data quality will be checked and every record violating the quality check will be moved to error tables. Typical ETL design will read error data from the error table along with the source data. Record flags will be used to identify the reprocessed records and the records which are identified for reprocessing. The next type of exception that occur during the processing of various Informatica Cloud tasks are the non-fatal errors. A non-fatal error is an error or an exception that does not force the session to stop on its first occurrence. However, you can set the Stop on Error option in the session properties of Informatica Cloud Service to indicate how many non-fatal errors the task can encounter before it stops the session. Enter the number of non-fatal errors you want to allow before stopping the session. If you specify 0, non-fatal errors do not cause the session to stop. There are 3 main types of non-fatal errors. Reader error. This error happens while reading from the database source or flat file or any other kind of source system. Write error. This error occurs while writing to the database or target. Transformation error. This error is encountered by the integration service while transforming the data. Non-fatal exception causes the records to be dropped out in the ETL process, which is critical to quality. Hence, you must handle these exceptions so that critical data is protected. Informatica Cloud provides us with 3 different ways to handle non-fatal exceptions. They are default field value setting, error handling setting, row error logging. We will discuss each of these techniques in details in the coming slide. Default field value setting. Let us discuss how we can handle non-fatal exception with default field value setting. Using default value property is a good way to handle exceptions caused due to null values and unexpected transformation errors. The designer assigns default values to handle null values and output transformation errors. In the given screenshot, there is an expression validating the field salary. If the salary of any record not provided and is null, it will not be wise to discard the record due to this reason. Instead, you can set a default value for all those records for which salary is null. Hence, if salary is null, the default value would be 0. Otherwise, the actual value of the salary would be returned from the expression transformation. Another type of non-fatal exception handling technique is row error logging. This technique helps in capturing any exception, which is not considered during the design and coded in the mapping. It is the perfect way of capturing any unexpected exceptions. You do not have any error configuration required in the mapping creation stage. After the mapping is created, use this mapping to create a mapping task or MT. While configuring the session of the MT, under the Schedule tab, you can set the session properties for error handling as shown in the image. Error handling settings. Here is a detail on what each property means. Stop on errors indicates how many non-fatal errors the integration service can encounter before it stops the session. On-stored procedure error. If you select Stop Session, the integration service stops the session on errors, executing a pre-session or post-session stored procedure. On pre-session command task error. If you select Stop Session, the integration service stops the session on errors, executing pre-session shell command. Pre-post SQL error. If you select Stop Session, the integration service stops the session errors, executing pre-session or post-session SQL. Let us now discuss a few more exception handling settings, using which we would create a table containing the details of the error by extracting it from session log. This makes it easy for the user to fetch the reason for the error. Note that these features are not out-of-the-box features of Informatica Cloud. You need to configure some settings to accomplish this. The properties of these settings are error log type. The setting specifies the type of error log to be created. It can be a table in a relational database or a flat file. Error log file directory. The setting specifies the directory where the log file is to be created. This directory must be local to the system where the secure agent is installed. Error log file name. Error log file name specifies the exact name of the file where relational or flat file logs can be written. Log row data specifies whether or not to log the transformation row data in the error log file. Log source row data specifies whether or not to log source row data in the error log file. Data column delimiter. If the setting is on, data will be delimited by the specified character in the DB column. Let us now discuss some pros and cons of row error logging technique. Row error logging technique is an out-of-the-box solution provided by Informatica. Hence, you do not have to buy any additional licenses or download plugins to get the feature available to you in your org. This technique captures all types of errors, including those which are unexpected. This technique requires less coding and testing efforts by the development team to catch and debug errors in transformation and mapping. However, there are a few cons as well. If an error occurs after an active transformation, integration service will not be able to capture source data into the error table, so it becomes difficult to debug and fix the errors. This method also incurs an additional overhead to the session performance, although this is expected and acceptable. Let us now discuss fatal exceptions in detail. Fatal exceptions result in stopping the session. All the reading and writing are stopped, and the integration service rolls back all the data that is not committed to the target database. This happens when there is a loss of connection and the integration service is not able to access source, target, or repository. This can include loss of connection or target database errors, such as lack of database space to load data. When the session encounters fatal error, the integration service terminates the session. To handle fatal errors, you can either use restartable ETL design for your mapping or use the mapping recovery features of Informatica Cloud. Let us discuss these two exception handling techniques now. Restartable ETL design. Restartability is the ability to restart an ETL job if a processing step fails to execute properly. This will avoid the need of any manual cleaning up before a failed job can restart. You want the ability to restart processing at this step where it failed, as well as the ability to restart the entire ETL session. Reject files or bad files. Let us now understand what bad files are. Bad files are often termed as reject files that holds the data for the entire row, which is rejected by the target while writing. Whenever a session is created with a target, reject files are also created along with it. The file always appends the data to the bad file for each load. Why do we need bad files? Bad files always extend the scope of error tracking. It helps you to get the record and the values which got rejected. And with the help of the information available in the session log, you can perform some analysis to track the exact error and take steps to correct it accordingly. You might also use the bad file to send it to the users as an attachment with some modifications to the record using scripting. How does this work? The file always appends the data to the bad file for each load. A flat file with the extension of .bad is created for each target. The integration service assigns the name of the bad file, same as the name of the target instance. In this demo, we will focus on two ways to catch and mitigate error conditions in Informatica Cloud. We will first use the error handling functions, that is error and abort, in an expression transformation inside a mapping to log the errors in the session log file. Then we will configure the session properties of the mapping configuration task to read the error entries from the session log into a table for better analysis of the errors. Log into Informatica Cloud Training Org using your credentials. In the Data Integration pane, select New from the Navigation pane. To create a new mapping, click Mappings from the New Asset window and then select the Mapping option. Click Create. A mapping canvas appears. In the Mapping Properties, enter the name of the mapping as M, Pattern, Expression Handling. Select the source transformation available on the mapping canvas. In the General tab, name it SRC. In the Source tab, select your flat file connection from the Connection drop-down. Source type should be single object. To select object, click the Select button and choose the customerdata.csv file and click OK. Select the new target transformation on the canvas and click the bin icon to delete the transformation. Now we will add an expression transformation to validate input records. Drag and drop an expression transformation on the canvas. Link the source transformation to the expression transformation. Under the New Expression Properties pane, in General tab, name the expression EXP validation. Click on the Expression tab. Click the plus icon. In the New Field window, select Field Type as Output Field. Enter the name Valid, Not Valid and select Type as String and click OK. Now click the Configure option beside the Valid, Not Valid field. In the Appeared window, enter the expression as shown on the screen and click OK. Add a target on the canvas. Link the expression transformation to the target transformation. Name it as TGT in the General tab. Click on the Target tab. Select your flat file connection from the Connection drop-down. Select Target Type as Single Object. To select the object, click the Select button. Then from the pop-up window, choose the TGT Customer Data.csv file and click OK. Here the operation is by default Insert because our target file is empty. Now in the Field Mapping tab, select the Field Mapping option as Manual. And to match all the common fields, click the Auto Match button. But the last field, Sales of Target, should not be matched with the field Sales of the Source. So select that field, click the arrow icon, and select Unmap Selected option. Now map the field Valid, Not Valid of Source with the field Sales of Target. Click the Validate icon to validate the mapping. Click on Save to save the mapping and click Run. Select your runtime environment and click Run. Check the status of the task while it is running in the My Jobs page. We can observe that the task ran with a warning with 11 success rows and 4 error rows. These 4 rows didn't satisfy the format of data for sales. They had a negative value, but sales value can never be negative. To check the rejected records, open the session log file. Now click the Download Session Log. Open it and check the row number, which consisted of invalid records. You can also observe the details of the record here and check what went wrong. Session log is difficult to understand, so we need to convert it in a proper tabular format by loading it in a flat file or some relational table. For the purpose of this demo, we will be loading it in a flat file. Click the New button to create a new mapping task. In the Definition tab, give a suitable name to the task. Select your runtime environment. Click the Select button to select the mapping. Select the M Pattern Exception Handling from the list and click Select. Click Next. In the Schedule tab, hover down to Configure Advanced Session Properties. Click Add to add new property. Select Error Log Type from the Session Property Name dropdown. Select Flat File from the Session Property Value dropdown. Click Add to add new property. Select Error File Name from the Session Property Name dropdown. Name the file as errorlist.csv in the Session Property Value field. Similarly, add log row data and log source row data to the Session Property Name and click Yes Radio button for the Session Property Value. Also select Data Column Delimiter from the Session Property dropdown and enter comma in the Session Property Value field. Click Finish and then click Run to execute the task. You can check the status of the task while it is running from the My Jobs page. You can check that the task ran with a warning with 11 success rows and 4 error rows. To view these error rows, Open the location where your secure agent is installed, and you can locate the error list file using the path shown on the screen. Here you can observe all the records which consist some error. You can correct them and send it back to the source for reloading purpose. This concludes exception handling demonstration. In this lab, you will configure a mapping in Informatica Cloud to handle non-fatal errors. This concludes the module on exception handling. This module showed you how to understand the requirement of exception handling, discuss types of exceptions, discuss user-defined fatal and non-fatal exceptions, and discuss reject files.